I welcome you to the pure world I have forged.
The third entry in the Tomb Raider series saw Lara's biggest adventure yet. Travelling the world to locate 4 meteorite artifacts on behalf of her client, Dr. Willard, Lara encounters a colourful cast of foes along the way. From living statues in India to crazy Scottish Spider-Men, Tomb Raider 3 saw much improvement to the combat and enemy variety. Not only are enemies smarter now compared to the thugs in Tomb Raider 2, but they challenge Lara every step of the way during her adventure. The bosses were also given an upgrade and offer the steepest challenges in the series so far. As per usual, bosses will be ranked on difficulty, abilities, arena and story context. If you haven't seen my ranking videos for the Tomb Raider 1 and Tomb Raider 2 bosses, then please check them out too, links in the description. With invincible bosses to deadly monsters, let's dive into Tomb Raider 3 bosses ranked.
Well, I'm not quite sure where you're coming from.
Number 8. An old familiar sight at this point in the series, the T-Rex can be found at the crash site in the South Pacific levels. Prior to this level, Lara meets a wounded Australian soldier who had the misfortune of crashing on an island full of cannibals, and losing one of his legs. While Lara theorises the cannibals are keeping him for dessert, the soldier references
something spooky is in that jungle,
aka bloody dinosaurs. The crash site is littered with dinos. Raptors return from Tomb Raider 1, and the new compies scurry around to nibble Lara's ankles. The real star is Big Mama T-Rex, who we find in a cave along with her nest. We'll learn later that the meteorite artifacts have links to evolution, which may justify how dinos are still walking around in this area. The T-Rex fight is just fine. It makes a bit more sense for the dinosaurs to be here compared to Tomb Raider 2, but it's just more of the same. There are a couple of nice details to note. Firstly, the T-Rex seems to be distracted by the flares, a little reference to that scene in Jurassic Park perhaps? It will actually follow the flare, giving Lara time to run for cover. Another nice touch is that if the soldier above the T-Rex pit is still alive, he will actually help Lara by shooting it, which in the Tomb Raider remasters will earn you an achievement. The T-Rex is kind of like seeing an old friend again. Familiar, comfy and nice, but isn't anything new or groundbreaking, especially compared to other bosses in this game. Also, fun fact, this is the last time Lara will officially encounter a dinosaur in the original series. So long, dinos. I guess you really are extinct now. Number 7. A slightly dubious entry in this list, as they might technically not even be bosses. With the Tomb Raider remasters, we get a helpful little health bar when we face a boss. But when it comes to sub-boss status, I think these guys fit the bill. The Lost City of Tinos is the boss level of Tomb Raider 3, similar to the Temple of Xi'an from Tomb Raider 2. A massive gauntlet of traps, baddies and platforming challenges. These Tinos mutants are the biggest and baddest enemies we face in this level. They seem to be guardians of the city, and are equipped with some serious firepower to defend it. Not only are they built like tanks, but hit like them too. Not to mention their projectile fireballs that can burn Lara to a crisp. Stationed throughout a few sections in Tinos, the real challenge comes from this trap room, where you are locked inside and have to face a bunch of them. It feels very much like a boss arena, and trying to avoid them and pull the levers you need will not end well for poor Lara. Their existence was foreshadowed by Willard himself, suggesting that the deeper you go into this place, the more evolved the mutants would be. They also seem to be a more advanced form of the large mutants faced in the RX tech mines. Again, suggesting that the true potential of the meteorite artifacts lie in the core of this place. There is not much else to say about them. They are decent enemies with interesting potential within the story, but that's about it. Number 6. The first major enemies we face in Tomb Raider 3, the Kali statues perfectly display the improved enemy difficulty in this game. Up to this point, we've only faced natural enemies like monkeys, snakes and the formidable tigers. The Kali statues are the first supernatural enemies Lara fights, and they offer a decent challenge. The build-up to these enemies is great. Seeing a 6-armed statue in this room, seemingly as an impressive symbol of the goddess Kali, the next room has a similar statue, but this one doesn't stay still for long. As mentioned before, the statues are great examples of the improved enemy AI in the Tomb Raider series. Unlike the grunts from Tomb Raider 2, these statues seem to have a greater sense of self-preservation. If Lara shoots them too much, they will actually cross their swords to stop any damage. Lara is unable to kill them while they are like this. You can holster your guns to make them stop defending, but doing so makes you vulnerable. The few areas you face the statues in temple ruins, offers enough room to avoid their attacks, but leaving them can sometimes be more trouble than it's worth. This first room needs clearing as the statue will slice you to pieces if you try to use the keys, even getting its own death animation for Lara. The second encounter pits Lara against 2 statues, both of which must be defeated to gain a sword to unlock the door. You thought one was tough? Well, 12 arms are stronger than 6, but with a bit of patience, Lara can easily avoid their attacks using the higher sections. The final one guards the exit to the temple, alongside the unfortunate corpses of Randy and Rory. One of them seems to have met a grisly end at the many hands of Kali, with a gruesome slice down his body. This area has a large enough space to avoid its attacks, and upon defeating it, Lara is free to escape the temple. Upon defeat, the statues turn back into stone. Maybe they are dead, maybe they are simply returning to their dormant state. Kind of creepy to think another explorer might find them one day. Sadly, there isn't much story to go on for these statues. Perhaps they were given life by the Enfada Stone, with the purpose of protecting it from thieves. This final room in particular could possibly have been where this stone was originally placed, and perhaps why Randy and Rory were both killed here, or so we think. Regardless, the Kali statues are a unique boss encounter in the series, and the way they are utilised in temple ruins makes them unforgettable. Also, they served as inspiration for an enemy in the first Tomb Raider movie, creating an iconic scene. Number 5.
Hello? Hello?
What? What do you want from me now?
Lara's first human opponent in Tomb Raider 3 and the boss of the India section, Tony might be one of the craziest characters in the series. Upon finishing the first level, Lara meets Tony in his camp. The poor man clearly isn't all there. Ignoring the Scottish voice coming from his radio, Tony seems to be packing up camp, despite the fact that his colleagues Randy and Rory have gone missing. His delicate mental state seems to indicate he doesn't care, and he runs off into the jungle, much to Lara's annoyance. The temple ruins reveal the fate of Randy and Rory, and when Lara emerges outside, she sees Tony about to enjoy some water rafting. He's had something of a makeover though, and we can see a strange face sticking out of his chest, not to mention his hidden telekinetic powers. Lara barely survives Tony trying to drop a temple on her, and follows him down the river Ganges. Perhaps he is planning a trap for her in the caves of Kalia, or maybe in his madness he fled in there to hide. The final level in India sets a standard for the rest of the game, where the main boss of each location has a mini level for Lara to complete first before taking them down. The caves are a labyrinth, with hidden corners that may offer a nice pickup, or a kiss from a cobra should you be unlucky. Falling into a pit of cobras and being chased by a boulder, we finally come face to face with Tony. He grabbed the Enfada Stone for himself, possibly letting Randy and Rory get butchered by the Kali statue to snag it. He may have even killed Randy himself, as Randy had a gaping hole in his chest that seems at odds with the slice that Rory received. Perhaps Tony killed him with the Enfada Stone while Rory was attacked by the Kali statue? However he got it, Tony knows how to use the artifact's power. Not only was he able to use some kind of telekinetic powers to collapse the temple around Lara, but he can also control fire. This small boss arena has little room to maneuver, and Tony's powers have made the waters deadly. Tony will stay in the middle of the room and simply throw fireballs. While this sounds simple enough to deal with, the embers can scatter everywhere, and if one touches Lara, it's all over. Sadly for Tony, Lara's agility is more than enough to avoid his attacks. Not to mention you can find a grenade launcher in this room which will blast the insanity right out of him. When he's gone, you finally get the Infada Stone for yourself. Little did Lara know this was the tip of the iceberg for this adventure. Emerging from the caves, we come face to face with the Scottish tones of Dr. Willard. He's here to see what Tony was up to, but praises Lara for dealing with him herself. He also mentions Tony, Randy and Rory were all sent here as lab rats to recover the Infada Stone, one of 4 meteorite artifacts. This is where Lara's adventure really begins. Tony's boss fight is fairly simple, but it doesn't really need to be more. Story-wise, it's hard not to feel some sympathy for him. He lost his mind, perhaps due to the artifact, and is ultimately viewed as a pawn by Willard. Regardless, he fulfills his role well, setting the standard for all following boss fights to come. Number 4.
Surprise, bitch. I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me.
Said Sapphire probably at some point during Tomb Raider 3 Gold, aka The Lost Artifact. TR3's expansion offers only one boss, with Sapphire going from side boss in Tomb Raider 3 to the big bad in the expansion, the first and only time Tomb Raider has done such a twist. The setup is golden, if you will forgive the pun. Sapphire was the only boss who didn't directly kill in Tomb Raider 3, so her return feels plausible. The Lost Artifact story starts with Willard's demise, in which he gives Lara info about the 5th meteorite artifact held at his Loch Ness estate. A telegram mentions someone else knows about this, but their name is obscured. However, by the time Lara gets there, she finds that someone else has already grabbed the artifact. 3 guesses who. The rest of Tomb Raider 3 Gold gives hints to the true villain behind the expansion, SL Inc. being a big giveaway. We even see Sapphire's experiments in the flesh, a chilling callback to Geordie Bob and the Damned. She's clearly been using the Hand of Rathmore in a similar way to the Eye of Isis, exploring immortality and everlasting beauty by subjecting victims to its powers. Lara finds the artifact in an underwater facility, and eventually ends up in an abandoned French zoo of all places. Perhaps Sapphire has been using the zoo for more experiments. Eventually, Lara comes face to face with the villainess, finding her underneath the zoo in some scary catacombs. She's grabbed the Hand of Rathmore for herself, and is back to make Lara pay. Reunion offers a few more obstacles than Sapphire's previous fight in City. There's a small lead up to Sapphire, with boulders, undead enemies, and the familiar radioactive goop making each jump a hazard. Similar to City, Sapphire will ascend the catacombs at the same time as Lara. More undead goons block your path, but they are easily dispatched. They are a mere distraction compared to Sapphire blasting you with her laser attacks. Her attacks are identical to her original fight. The only difference now, she can actually be taken down by Lara's guns. Reaching the top of the catacombs to the final confrontation, wait for the boulder to descend, similar to Willard's fight in Tomb Raider 3. When that's down, open fire. There is plenty of cover, and now that Sapphire is in one spot, she's an easy target. She can only be damaged while she's charging up her attacks, but the rocket launcher will make short work of her. Putting her down for the final time lets Lara complete her meteorite artifact collection. Essentially, this boss fight is a recontextualized version of Sapphire's fight from Tomb Raider 3. It's an awesome touch to have a side baddie become the main baddie in the expansion. The environmental storytelling gives this build-up a satisfying climax, but some finer touches would have been nice. Sapphire having the Hand of Rathmore on her staff rather than the Eye of Isis would have made more sense. It's always nice to see how assets are reused in the expansions, and Reunion is a great example of that. Also, some fun trivia. Sapphire is much easier to defeat in the original Lost Artifact. One rocket is enough to dispatch her. Her health bar was buffed in the remastered version to make her a true final boss. Number 3. The final boss of the South Pacific levels, Puna seems like a natural step up from Tony in boss terms. He is found at the end of the Temple of Puna level conveniently, which makes Caves of Kalia look like a cakewalk. Enemies that poison you, rolling blades, spike ceilings and boulders all block your path before you can even reach the guy in charge. When you do meet him, he sits on a throne thinking he's a big man, and as soon as you go near him, he shows you who's boss. He has a nasty insta-kill lightning bolt, using the power of his artifact, the Aura Dagger. Lara must keep on the move to avoid dying. What's worse is that he has a protective force field around him, making your shots useless unless timed right. During his shots, you can counterattack with your own, hitting him in that brief window. After taking some damage, Puna will switch to his next form of attack, summoning lizard minions to attack Lara. These creatures were first seen in the previous level, Madubu Gorge, and are little pests that poison you if you get too close. Killing them, Puna will resume his lightning bolts. Rinse and repeat until he finally pops. While not terribly complicated to deal with, Puna does offer a decent challenge. His insta-kill attack means you've got to keep on the move, and the room itself offers a nasty fall into a bottomless pit. Oh, there is a bottom. Puna feels like a natural increase in difficulty compared to Tony. His offensive attacks are far more lethal, not to mention he can summon other enemies to face. Also, the fact he is invulnerable while stationary means there is a bit of strategy involved to his fight. From a lore standpoint, we don't really know much about Puna. The Australian soldier at the end of the coastal village mentions that he was captured as
Some sort of sacrifice to their god who lives up in the hills.
After escaping the crash site, Lara meets a local who tells her how the Aura Dagger arrived in this place, delivered by one of Darwin's sailors, Smythe. It didn't end well for him though. If Puna acquired the Aura Dagger around then, it would make him over 100 years old. As we learn with Sapphire, these artifacts have the power to keep the owners alive long after they should have died, so Puna being around for that long is entirely plausible. Puna is definitely a worthy adversary to finalise the South Pacific levels. While lacking in the lore department, there is plenty of room for speculation, which is often the strength within the Tomb Raider series. Number 2.
Oh, hi, come in. Make yourself at home. I won't be a minute.
Dr. Mark Willard is the big bad of Tomb Raider 3. He helps set the story in motion, having his team look for the Infada Stone, and then hiring Lara and India to find all 4 meteorite artifacts. When we first meet Willard, his unassuming and charming presence is off-putting, and while he seems innocent enough, Lara clearly knows better. Despite her suspicions, Willard offers Lara more goodies to find, which as we know is her passion in life. Antarctica is Willard's base of operations, so Lara pays him a visit once she's grabbed all the meteorite artifacts. Surprise, surprise, it turns out Willard has nefarious plans. He's been excavating some ancient ruins here in Antarctica, discovering where the meteorite artifacts were originally housed. The deeper his men went into the ruins, the more exposed they became to the mutagenic meteorite rock, the same material the 4 artifacts were made from. These mutations intrigued Willard, who knows that the key to mastering these mutations are the 4 artifacts Lara has helpfully brought to him. Lara is appalled by his lack of concern for his workers, and even more so by his intentions to manipulate evolution using the artifacts. Perhaps it's giving her flashbacks to Natla? Before she can act, Willard yeets a table at her and escapes, heading deeper underground to the meteorite cavern. Chasing him into the mines, Lara sees more evidence of the mutations, each getting worse and worse. Willard's fascination with them is rather grim. Like Natla, he seems to want to unleash the evolutionary potential of these artifacts on the Earth, which doesn't sound like fun for humanity. Eventually, Lara comes face to face with the Good Doctor, using the 4 artifacts to activate the meteorite core. He speculated that this is where the true potential for mutations is housed. Lara watches as Willard himself becomes part of the experiment, throwing himself into the core. If mutating into a giant spider with a human face is part of evolution, then Willard got his wish. As the final boss of Tomb Raider 3, it's not as simple as blasting him to hell with your guns. On first encounter, this might seem to work, but Willard will recover and attack again, the remasters helpfully showing his health bar regenerating. Willard proves he's boss too, with some nasty insta-kills. Try to get up close, why, and he stabs Lara with his spider legs. Try to climb out of the cavern and he will blast you with a fireball. It is possible to escape the cavern while he is still alive, with the remasters even granting you an achievement for it, but it's not a task for the faint-hearted. Luckily, Lara is agile enough to keep her distance. Blasting him till he falls is the way to go, so you can grab one of the 4 artifacts placed in the cavern. Essentially, rinse and repeat until you have reclaimed your collection. Willard gets up one last time, but this time he can be finished off. Put him down for the 5th and final time, and let him vanish into nothing. While this fight isn't too complex, the spectacle alone is worthy of a final boss. It is a deadly mix of most of the previous bosses, Tony's lethal projectiles, Puna's insta-kill and Saphire's invincibility, wrapped up in a nightmarish spider package. Willard is perhaps a less obvious villain compared to Natla or Bartoli. His cheerful demeanour is at odds with his unhealthy fascination with evolution. While it seems his end goal is similar to Natla's, to unleash a new wave of evolution on the world, he also seems to be winging it, so to speak. He almost seems to be seeing what happens, needing the 4 meteorite artifacts to unlock the secrets of the cavern. Did he intend to become a big mutant spider, or was it just his morbid curiosity? He fulfills his role as a final boss well, but the fight is fairly simple. It's an inverse of previous bosses, where there is more level after he is defeated. Escaping the cavern, Lara deals with some goons before getting a helicopter ride home, and so ends Tomb Raider 3, concluding with a satisfying, if simple, boss fight. Before we unveil number 1, let's recap the rankings so far. Also, if you've been enjoying this video, I would really appreciate if you would like, comment and subscribe. Tell me who your favourite Tomb Raider 3 boss is below. Number 8, T-Rex. Number 7, Tinos Mutanus. Number 6, Kali statues. Number 5, Tony. Number 4, Sapphire, Reunion. Number 3, Puna. Number 2, Willard. Number 1.
Ah, Miss Croft. I take it you're ready to sign on.
Perhaps controversial considering she's not the final boss, technically, but I don't care. Sapphire Lee, the boss of the London levels, is the queen of the TR3 bosses. Why, may you ask? Where to start? Sapphire has elements to her that make her an excellent antagonist. The build-up to her debut in the London levels is set up well. With each cutscene, we start to slowly learn more and more about this mysterious businesswoman. Lara meets Sapphire's henchman, John, at the top of the Thames Wharf. After a brief scuffle, Lara learns from this mercenary that Sapphire employs him, as she had his father and grandfather. Lara questions how old Sapphire must be if this is true, to which John replies late 20s to early 30s.
Right.
Lara seems dubious, but continues underground to Aldwych, an abandoned train station. Though as it turns out, not abandoned at all. Lara confronts numerous thugs underground, all part of a group named The Damned. An edgy name, right? But with good reason. Lara eventually meets their leader, Geordie Bob. He immediately guesses that Lara is after Sapphire, but noting she's not after her for revenge. The Damned are all victims of Sapphire's experiments using her meteorite artifact, the Eye of Isis. Damned is an appropriate title, as Bob tells us that no matter what he had tried, he cannot die, and stays living despite his rotting flesh. He and the others were all thrown down here, all presumed dead. Sapphire seems to be hunting for everlasting beauty, and while she seems to have perfected immortality as evidenced by the Damned, the beauty part may need some work. Perhaps Sapphire has experimented on herself, making John's claim she's been around for generations but maintaining her youth plausible. Bob helps Lara infiltrate Sapphire's HQ, SL Inc., where we finally come face to face with the businesswoman. Sapphire doesn't seem surprised to see Lara, smugly greeting her as she enters her office uninvited. She almost seems amused, offering Lara a chance to work for her. Lara is quick to rebuff, noting that she doesn't want to end up like Sophia's past experiments. Lara just wants the artifact, but Sophia isn't willing to give it up.
Right, in your next life.
And so begins the best boss fight in the game. We face Sophia across a nasty drop into the abyss. Her artifact grants her 2 significant powers. Firstly, she can blast Lara with energy bolts. A fully charged run will take a huge chunk out of Lara's health. Secondly, she is completely invulnerable to Lara's shots. You can shoot her as she charges up a full blast to prevent it happening, but this won't harm her. Trying to get in her face will see you repelled by a force field, sending Lara flying off the building. Like Willard, her abilities seem to be the best of both Tony and Puna, invulnerability with projectiles. Unlike Puna, her defences are always up, meaning Lara has to be a bit creative with how to deal with her. What elevates this fight is the fact that it is a platforming challenge and boss fight combined. Sophia is as agile as Lara, and will climb her side of the building at the same speed Lara does. It's a race to the top, with Lara having to avoid Sophia's attacks as they ascend. Lara is completely on the back foot here. Avoiding Sophia's attacks is one thing, but there are a couple of choke points that make it hard for you to avoid damage, not to mention falling off the edge. As you head to the top, we hear a helicopter, Sophia's form of escape. The top leads to the final standoff, but how do we take her down? Serving as one of the most unique ways to deal with a boss, Lara can jump to this electricity box and shoot it, electrifying the walkway Sophia is standing on. And so Sophia is put to rest. For now. This creative way we deal with Sophia not only serves as one of the most memorable boss encounters in the series, but it sets up Sophia's return in TR3 Gold. Her death in City is a classic case of, if you want something done right, do it yourself. I.e., Lara should have killed Sophia with her own guns rather than rely on some electricity. It gives a sense of plausibility to Sophia's comeback, as if Lara is being punished for not having ended her with her own hands. Sophia is a perfect example of how the combat has grown in the series, being essentially Lara as a boss, at least in terms of her agility. She takes the best parts of the other bosses in Tomb Raider 3 and combines them, making her both challenging and memorable. This is why she ranks number 1 for the Tomb Raider 3 bosses. There we have it. Tomb Raider 3's bosses ranked. That's the original trilogy in the bag. Next up will be Tomb Raider 4. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking your time to check out my stuff. Please leave a like and comment and subscribe if you think I deserve it. You can catch me on both Twitter and Twitch under the 13th Elysium. I do stream a lot of Tomb Raider, usually on Tuesdays, so feel free to pop in and say hey. I had a lot of fun making this video. I really want to make more sort of things like this, so hopefully we'll see some more in the future. But yeah, stay tuned for more content, and thanks for watching.